What is up, Notre Dame fans? I'm Mike Singer, blueandgold.com. He's Mike Goolsby, former Fighting Irish linebacker and captain. I wasn't sure if we were going to do a show today. I figured Mike wasn't really fired up to talk Irish football, but, you know, I insisted that we did. Of course, I'm kidding. Mike Goolsby, again, former Notre Dame linebacker. I'm Mike Singer, and tons to talk about. This is the Mike Goolsby Show. Appreciate you guys joining us live. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, whether you're with us live or watching back. And if you're listening via podcast channel, we appreciate you guys too. Just make sure you leave us a 5-star rating review wherever you listen to your podcast. So, Mike, I will kind of we have different talking points that we want to discuss, of course. We are going to get to questions near the end of the show. Of course, we are easily bought, so drop a super chat and we will take your question right away, no matter how on topic or off topic it is. If you want to ask Mike Goolsby what size that shirt is, you can ask it. If you want to ask about quarterback play or linebacker play, you can do that. But Mike, to open the show, your general thoughts on Notre Dame Cincinnati, take it wherever you want it.
Mike, you're on fire. Two zingers in your opener
Yeah.
there. The opening thought was the irony of Kelly coming off of his win total and passing Coach Rockne, and then how ironic that we come out against his former team, which adds another layer of irony to this whole thing, and just come out with a complete turd of a performance, specifically like coaching wise. I mean, the effort on the field from the players was poor, but the preparation and the game plan itself, since he was a step ahead of us. And even with all of that, Mike, we do have enough talent on the team and on the field that we were able to hang around, despite, the three huge turnovers, and we're into the game, almost midway to the fourth quarter, we're in the game, and there's a cliche in sports talk, etc. Big time players make big time plays in big time games. And aside from less than one handful of players, nobody stepped up today to really seize the moment. And that was disappointing. And both of those things discussed: poor coaching, poor prep, and lack of people rising and players rising to the moment. We've discussed this ad nauseum. And Mike, I enjoy doing this. I do. I love seeing your face every Sunday. But dude, it's difficult. It's difficult to watch. Ostensibly, we're watching the same movie over and over and over again, and then you have to go live and try and bring up talking points and try and find, turn over some stones and try and discuss things that maybe haven't been looked at that closely before. So it's frustrating for us. I know it's frustrating for the team. It's frustrating for the coaches, but that was a bad loss. And people can talk about how good of a team was Cincinnati truly. No, they're not Bama. They're not Georgia. I mean, they're not really even Bama and Georgia this year are tier 1 teams. And there's, maybe a 5 to 10 teams that are in that tier 2. I mean, maybe Cincinnati kind of squeaks into that tier 2 category for the moment. Cincinnati's not a great team. Nevertheless, it was a big game, and we crapped down our leg. And this is going to be really tough. And the last thing, Mike, before we get into this, is when I was hired into this role, our boss told me to use positive objectivity, was kind of the positive objectivity. So I'm going to try and be objectively optimistic, but this is going to be tough. So, you suggested, and maybe there was a little bit of foreshadowing on your part, Mike, last week, maybe we ought to just have a couple beverages. And I think tonight we're both going to partake. So let's get into this. Yeah, man. Cheers.
Cheers. What are you sipping on?
It's a seltzer. This is a judgment-free zone. I'm man enough to drink a seltzer.
Dude,
live.
I think if, look at you right now showing the little chest hair. I'm sorry, podcast audience. You really need to be on YouTube to see this man. When you're a former Notre Dame linebacker and captain and look as good as you do, yeah, you can drink whatever the hell you want.
Absolutely.
Me,
yeah.
I don't think I can, I can get away with that though. So I got a a seasonal Sam Adams. It's not
Classy.
Oktoberfest. It's some winter one. I don't remember, but
It's probably pumpkin spice, but nevertheless.
it's not. I do have the pumpkin one though, and I have to say it is
Of
pretty good. We
course you
do
do.
we
Of
do have
course you do.
our first super chat. Nick Davis, appreciate it. Says the Drew Pine era starts now. Nick is a buddy and is very been vocal about Drew Pine, and he said earlier that he's got $5 to donate. So I better see that other $2, Nick. Just kidding you, kind of. So we will definitely talk Drew Pine. But first, Mike, the offensive line. I think let's kind of go there, if you don't mind. You know, positional changes. What would you do? I mean, what do you have to say about the offensive line right now?
The offensive line is leakier than the than like the southern border. It's like it's brutal, dude. It's brutal. So you did move some personnel around, which you like to see. Kane Madden is so bad. Um, and it's interesting, like you train, again, I train kids. I talk about this damn near every episode. Like I train kids on the side, some really high level kids. And like you look at a kid that's going to go to a Power Five school, and you look at a school that's going to go to a Group of Five school, like a Marshall. And I don't know if the talent, I mean, I guess maybe we're learning, but like the talent disparity must be that severe. Coach Reese, to his credit, this week he rolled out the latest iteration of pass protection. So like this week, the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. The flavor of the week was we're going to leave a back in to protect, and in a lot of instances, we're going to leave two backs in to protect. Um, the problem with that is it didn't work, and I don't know. I don't have the pleasure of being in those meeting rooms, Mike, to like understand what it is that they're teaching. And Drew Brees, by the way, does a tremendous job. If Notre Dame fans like really want to know what's going on while you're watching the game, listen to Drew Brees, and he's like borderline passive aggressive, but he's trying to do his best to be positively optimistic or objectively optimistic, excuse me. Um, like on Buckner's second interception, there's three dudes. Our left tackle, our left guard, and Kyron are blocking one defensive end. Their stud first round draft pick defensive end runs a very basic stunt, and he loops in, and nobody's there to pick him up. So like when you're going to leave your back in, or even in this instance two backs in, we talked about I think a couple weeks ago. It's called like a searchlight where they look inside out, and our backs seem to almost be looking outside in. So if Kyron had stayed in, he would have eventually picked up that inside blocker. On Cohen's, there's so many quarterbacks in the rotation, Mike. I'm forgetting who's who at this point. But on Cohen's interception down there, which is brutal play all the way around. They out schemed us on that play. It starts with Michael Mayer, who's the only person on our team who seems to get open and catch a ball and want to do both. The defensive ends lined up in a 5 technique over the right tackle. Mayer conceivably would get a free release, and the defensive end bangs Michael Mayer before he goes out. Now, who does Kyron go to step up to pick up in terms of helping on pass pro? He goes to the guy that already banged the tight end, who's not really in a true pass rush mode. So Mayer falls down, and they Drew kept calling it a green dog. I would call it a delay blitz, where the linebacker's not coming instantly. He's sort of waiting. Brian Urlacher went into the Hall of Fame doing this. Sort of wait. Okay, then I pull my trigger. You sort of wait for it to clear up, and then you pull your trigger. So it didn't work. Coach Reese's latest scheme to try and support the offensive line didn't work. It's bad, folks. It's bad. Um, and then on the flip side, like in the run game, I tried to write down Breeze's full quote. This is maybe in the second quarter. Oh, and then we also went pistol this game, I think, to maybe try and give Kyron a little bit more vision, so he's lining up behind the quarterback as opposed to standing next to him. But Breeze calls it out. He goes, "This is the third time they've run this play this game thus far." And he's like, "Unfortunately, it's tough to run the ball when they have 7 in the box and you have 5 blockers." He's like, "You're gonna have to find some way to throw out of that formation." And like if Drew Brees can see it, I'm sure Cincinnati's defensive coordinators have seen it. That was a bad performance all the way around. I don't know what the solution is with the offensive line. I don't, Mike. I don't. I don't. We're tight end you. Yeah, I texted you about this kind of this sort of concept. Like we're tight end you. Every tight end that's played or started here rather since 2005 has been drafted. Every single one of them. We basically became O-line you. Imagine if our tight ends were falling down during their routes, dropping passes when they were open, whiffing on run blocks. Like you'd be like, what the hell? We're tight end you. Like who's the next tight end? We'll get the next guy in, right? There's got to be like, the depth chart's got to be stacked with talent. It's just like, how did that happen at O-line U? How is there nobody else waiting in the wings that's better? You're playing Joe Alt, who literally, folks, Mike, this time, 16, 18 months ago, the guy was 240 pounds, right? He was a tight end. So it's bad. It's bad, bad. And then so now we learned off of the Cincinnati game in the second half, their defensive approach versus our offense was just to rush three and just drop everybody into coverage. And we couldn't even, convert first downs hardly against a scheme like that. So they're going to know that our receivers can't get off a jam. They're going to man up everybody on the outside, and they're just going to bring noise up the middle. And that's the recipe to beat us until we figure it out.
Mike, I really don't appreciate you bringing in any negative connotation onto Joe Alt's name. That's just uncalled for.
No, he's awesome.
No, he is awesome.
Joe, he's been playing great. He has some of the best technique, but I'm saying, folks, he was a four-string. The poor kids. I've been a true freshman playing in Notre Dame Stadium before, and I was nervous running down on a kickoff team. This kid's out here going up against a first-round draft pick in number 21 on Cincinnati's defense. Like, I give Joe all the credit in the world, but that's how bad Joe shouldn't be playing at this point in his career. He's got a very high ceiling.
Yeah. Mike Singer, Mike Goolsby, we're live on YouTube. Appreciate those with us live. Make sure you hit that thumbs up, and appreciate you guys watching back as well. Past couple shows, we've had disconnections late in the show, so hopefully we don't have that. So
that's Mike's fault.
Yeah, that's my internet has crept out. But if that happens again, just bear with us. Or if Mike just says another bad thing about Joe Alt, I might just cancel him. So LMAO says, can Kyron play offensive line? Asking for a friend named Quinn. Got a little joke there, but do appreciate the super chat.
He's great in blitz. He's great in blitz pickup. I think they do need to, if they're going to run with this two back, sort of leave him in there to sort of chip/release. That needs to be communicated in that the offensive line is going to escort people out, and then the back's going to cover up the inside, or vice versa. But that didn't seem like that scheme. In theory, I guess is a good idea. We should shore up the pocket, but we're still getting sacks. It's almost absurd.
Yeah.
We're leaving in 7 and they're bringing 4 and we're still giving up, or 5 and we're still giving up sacks. Like it's almost incomprehensible.
Yeah. So, you said you don't know the fix for the offensive line, but do you still have I was looking through some of your notes you had for the game. Do you still have any suggestions of personnel? If Carmody, Baker are all healthy, which one are you playing at left tackle? Is it time to get Madden out and Kristofik in? Josh Lugg in there? Should Patterson move to a different position? What about right tackle? Any thoughts there, Mike?
Well, how many we get Blake Fisher back in 4 weeks, give or take?
I wouldn't. From what Kelly has said, don't even expect him. If he plays, it's a bonus. It's a pretty severe injury, so maybe November.
The plus to a loss like this is that you can, for all intents and purposes, throw out a playoff bid. You can kind of throw it out the window. So then it becomes sort of a developmental year. And when I say developmental, it doesn't mean we're going to lose, 5 games, right? Like there's enough talent for us to beat most teams on our schedule just based off of the talent. So I think where you can in spots, you probably try and work in some young talent. Like Lug has been poor. If anybody's going to get sat down permanently, it's Madden. Because again, you didn't recruit him. He hasn't been a part of your program, but for a number of months, I don't think it's going to affect an O-line room that much. He knows how poorly he's played. And this is me being nice. Um, so yeah, I don't know if you put alt in, maybe leave alt in, or they have some sort of a quarter by quarter rotation. I don't know, Mike. I mean, I'm not the guy getting paid $500,000 a year to run the offense. I don't know. I made close to that doing this, but
The zingers are back.
I just I don't have the answers. And then now your best offensive weapon in Mayer is going to be probably sit out for a game or two. I mean, those high groin pulls take forever to fully heal. Pine's going to give you a better chance just because of the added mobility. He had a nice play last week where he escaped the pocket. I think that was on Kevin Austin's big drop there. Kyron picked up the blitzer. He rolled out of the pocket, threw a dime, got dropped naturally. Pine will give you a better chance for just some random escapability. Throw out the Buckner package at this point. Throw it out.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude. It's Mike. We can hardly run the ball, conventionally speaking, with a tailback, right? Like we can hardly do that. It's getting a little bit better, right? It's getting a little bit better. But if you have a hard enough time running with a super talented, a duo of super talented backs, then you're just going to put this poor kid back there and like, oh, we're going to run quarterback draw. Oh, and then they put Sivo Flemister in on one of them, who's a bigger body type lead blocker. It's like it couldn't be more obvious. I mean, it truly couldn't be more obvious. And then you got the potential to make that kid kind of shell shocked
Yeah.
going in the future, just because every time he goes in there, he's just getting smacked, right?
Now, that's a good point on Buckner, because after the Toledo game, my point, and I'm not right often, but my thing was like, look, he's doing this against Toledo. We need to calm down with saying that Cone needs to be benched for Buckner as the starting quarterback. Little did I know at that point in time that Cone needed to be benched for Pine, and I love Drew
Yeah,
Pine, but
I think the excitement around Tyler was more, and I don't like to use the word anti, but it was more folks realizing that Cone probably wasn't the guy. So it's like it was more so not like pro Buckner or pro Pine. It was just like anybody other than Cone. I think is really what the realization most of us came to. You were a week late to the party, but yeah, let's roll with Pine. Let's roll with them.
yeah. What'd you see from him? I mean, numbers wise,
It wasn't great, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Neither. I mean, played three quarterbacks. Buckner had the bad interception. Cone had a bad interception. Pine led a touchdown drive. 9 of 22 compared to Cone's 14 of 22. But Pine higher, passing yards 143 to
Sure.
114. So just kind of your assessments with Pine's play, and then we got a super chat to get to that we'll talk quarterback. So your
So
thoughts on
with
Drew?
Pine, well, yeah, with Pine, I'll try and put it in to break it up into two buckets: tangibles and intangibles. Tangibles, quicker release, maybe 25% stronger arm, and then there's like the mobility piece to it all. And then as far as your scheme, because like, gosh darn, Mike, what the hell is this offense? Like, what is the identity? Every week we almost roll out a new scheme. Like we're going, 10 personnel last week with, I guess it's 11, but ostensibly it's 10 because Mayor split out. We're going, four wides. So it seemed like to start the season, Coach Reese wanted to go with that RPO. Drew gives you an opportunity to run a true RPO, open up some running lanes for your running backs, whereas Jack Cohn doesn't. So that's in the tangible bucket. And then intangibly, even I think Drew Brees actually mentioned this during the broadcast. Who Drew does a tremendous job. I'm calling him Drew like I know him, but but the team seems to respond to Drew Pine. And when Baker Mayfield went number one overall, I remember the GM of the Browns at the time was like, he's just got it. Like he's got some moxie. People follow him. You'll never be able to figure out what that formula exactly is, but that intangible bucket. And then when I was watching Drew run around out there, he sort of reminds you of Baker Mayfield. And that doesn't mean he's going to be Baker Mayfield. I'm just saying the way he carries himself, the way he zips the ball, he's a little bit loose out there, which is fun to see. And I'll tell you, man, as a former player, this is a novel thought, Mike. This is an absolute shitstorm. Like this season, this team, like it's bad, dude. And somebody that can come in there and still like everybody's kind of playing tight. You could tell the offensive line is tight. That like they're almost playing out of like a fear of failure at this point versus wanting to dominate. Like that's you can see that. And I think a kid like Drew comes in and sort of alleviates some of that and lightens the mood, and people tend to play better. We all perform better when we're a little loose. So I think now if Kelly rolls Cone out next week, that'll be borderline bizarre. That'll be bizarre
That
to
would be a
watch.
surprise.
So hopefully we put this quarterback conversation to rest until next season. So
Yeah. I mean, it's I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are really missing Ian Book, which Joseph drops a super chat.
oh, the irony of that, Mike. The irony of that.
Hypothetical, we start Ian Book / Pine. Do we win? Book had issues, but never lost this type of game to a non-elite Cincinnati type team, save Michigan in 2019.
I guess I'm going to try and do we win? Who knows? That's why they play the games. But Book had issues. So, yeah, I think to answer the question there, Joe, is yes, you start Pine. I think at this point, Pine gives you your best chance to win for a lot of reasons. I think he brings some mojo back to the offense. I think it helps you open up your RPO run game. I think he's a more accurate thrower. I think he has a quicker delivery. I think he has a little bit stronger of an arm. Um, yeah, and I think the team kind of responds to him, and that's you gotta go into games with like you have to have a place to stand, right? And right now our offense has no place to stand, and maybe the optimism looking at Drew, who's by this time, who's earned this right to play, I think that could, and gosh, fingers crossed, could kind of gel the unit
Sure.
as a whole.
Yeah. All right, some super chats to get to. From Jose, appreciate it. He says, "Why are I'm guessing why are our guys so loyal to not even real Notre Dame student athletes? Transfers, Kane Madden, Jack Cohn. I mean, you bring in transfers for a reason, right?" He says, "Instead, give me Rocco Spindler and Drew Pine." I would, before we go to you on this, Mike. I mean, you bring in transfers for a reason because you want them to play and you feel like they can give you the best chance to win. That's it at the end of the day. I don't. You're a former Notre Dame player, so I would defer to you on this. But the whole, not real Notre Dame students, I
Well,
don't know.
Mike, I'm a little bit with Jose on this because I've alluded to that in the past. Like in this episode, 20 minutes ago, I said you're going to sit somebody on that offensive line based off of their play. It's probably Cade Madden. Then also it's easiest to sit him because he doesn't have, the time spent and the trust built and the respect earned from that position group and that O line room as a whole. So there is something to that. I think strategically, Jose, I mean, this is me maybe grasping at straws here, but like if Notre Dame has shown through the transfer portal, Nick McLeod, Isaiah Pryor, Kane Madden, and Cone, they've all started. So I,
Skoranek.
I think that's, I'm
Ben
sorry,
Skoranek last year.
Ben Skowronek. Yeah, thank you, Mike. I was surprised I was able to pull those four out of my, where. But it's advertising. It's almost like recruiting kids out of high school. And look, we played Styles at wide receiver. Like you come here, you're going to get playing time. So there's probably some of that. But now that you've seen it, yeah, I'm with Jose. I'm pro Notre Dame guy. But I shudder to think, if Kane Madden's our best guy, that's at O-line-U, it's hard to understand or to get your head around.
As far as the comment on instead give me Spindler and Drew Pine, Greg Ladkey, who joined our staff Friday, is doing an excellent
Greg
job.
did a great job. I watched that show last night. He did a
Dude, that
great
was his
job.
first time hosting one of these, and you always
Kid
will give
sharp.
me credit, Mike, about hosting these and how difficult they can be, and they are. And he did a great job for his first time. And former Notre Dame guy, I believe he went to Notre Dame the same time you did, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so he did a great job. So he brought up the point. Look, if Rocco Spindler was good enough to play. I think he'd be playing. Like if there's no like, oh, he's a freshman, he should sit. Like they're playing anybody who can play. So Rocco, I literally was on the phone with a source today. Little tidbit here, and Rocco Spindler came up as a guy who folks in South Bend feel like is going to be a stud. He just might not be ready right now. I mean, you look at the four left tackles Notre Dame's played, two freshmen and two sophomores. Like they'll play anybody. So I just think a lot of comments about Rocco Spindler. Maybe if he plays, he's a difference maker. But I mean, they're playing anybody who can play right now, which kind of leads me into the next super chat. And again, if you want your questions answered right away, drop a super chat. We'll get to it. Garth says, I think your O-line needs to be alt from left to right, alt, Christophic, Patterson, Spindler, and Lug. We just had that other super chat talking about Kane Madden and the loyalty thing. Christophic came in for Madden. I want to say it. He was playing right guard. So, personally, Garth, I'm okay with this. Or if it's, Christophic right guard and Zeke Correll, I think I might have said Lug or just a minute ago, but I meant Correll. Zeke Correll playing left guard. That was the fourth quarter lineup. I like that from left to right. Alt, Correll, Patterson, Christophic, and Lug. Might not be a bad lineup.
Yeah, it's you can go over personnel. It's like it's difficult to do. It's like all these preseason shows on who's gonna catch the most passes.
Hey,
It's a
take
lot
it
of it.
easy. We those videos do great.
No, they do, but I mean, but fundamentally it's guesswork, right? So, and then we had some people on the message boards kind of cutting us up, talking about that we don't get into like technique and stuff. So like, if I got to go back and watch the game 3 times, like maybe you all should watch it a couple times too. Like go back and watch like how poor our O line plays. So just watch a quarter or two and just focus solely on the offensive line. And I don't know what techniques being taught. Like there's third and obvious where we're clearly passing the ball, and like our tackles will still have their hand in the dirt, which isn't conducive to getting a lot of depth on your pass set. Like I saw a play where I think we gave up a sack or something bad happened, but Cade Mann's playing right guard. He comes out of his stance and just gives the guy his arm. He gives him, kind of a head fake, arm over, and then he tries to like trip the guy. And it's like, what? He didn't even get like any sort of vertical depth in his pass. Like, what is being taught? And then again, like, if you just look at like, turn on the game tonight, turn on the NFL game tonight, Pats, Bucks. Like, you'll see left tackles that are in a 2-point stance, which allows them to get out of that stance and get some depth so they don't get beat up field. Whereas we have our guys in a 3-point and they're in this kind of hunched over. It's just not an athletic enough, conducive enough. If you're drive blocking, maybe that works. It's bad. So it's part of it is the personnel. Clearly, like it's in Cade Mann's case, like it's just the body type. They keep rolling him out there. He's so round, you could literally roll him out there. Like body type wise, he ain't it. And then technique wise, I don't know what's being taught. And then again, we're leaving these 2 backs in, and that's a good scheme. It makes sense. Like, okay, it's 7-on-5. We should win, and we still lose. I don't know if that's being hashed out in terms of who's doing what and like how are we going to go about this. So personnel is an issue. Technique is another issue entirely.
Okay. All right. All right. We have. All right. Let's stick with the quarterbacks. You had taken in your notes that I saw some Ian Book, Drew Pine comparisons in their ascensions. You still want to touch on that, Mike?
Yeah, well, and this is where God we miss Lou sometimes, Mike. Right? This is a time where you need to call on Lou, but in terms of how and when Book took over versus how Pine is taking over the position, there seems to be a lot of parallels there where like who did Book take over for? Wimbush,
Yeah.
right? And Kelly was kind of reluctant to sort of make that transition, and it seems like Kelly's been reluctant to make that transition from Cone to whomever. So I just think, trying to find stuff to talk about, that just seemed like the reluctance of Kelly to do so while it's so obvious to the rest of us that that move needs to be made. It's just interesting.
Sure. All right. We have not touched on the defense yet, Mike. Um, I mean, look, the offense did not help them out. On a few occasions, their turnovers. Let's see. Notre Dame turned the ball over 3 times, 2 picks, and the fumbled. I'm trying to find the stat for points off turnovers. 7, but I want to say it was. I want to feel like it was 10. But regardless, what did you think of the defense? Like I said, the offense certainly wasn't helping them out. The Tyree, fumble led to points. There was 2 bad drives, touchdowns they gave up, but otherwise, I mean, pretty good performance, right? I mean, if you just look at 24 points, like Notre Dame should score more than 24 points against Cincinnati and top 10 team. So what do you have to say about the defensive performance?
Yes, we gave up 24 points. They did miss 2 field goals, but the defense we talked about, or I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Mike, that like as a team, as an offense, you need to have a place to stand. So our defense as a team right now is giving us a place to stand. They played fairly well. There wasn't really any big plays save for Foskey's strip sack. And that's where when
Only
leading
sack
off
of
the
the game,
show,
by the
my
way, Mike. Only sack.
yeah. So, and I think I've mentioned this on previous episodes where it's like I like Freeman's scheme, but like I don't think we get home enough where it's like, okay, well, you create what do you call them, chaos plays or whatever they're called. Like I want a sack. So we get 1 sack that was a big play. That was a big time player in a big time game that steps up and makes a play. I don't know why Drew Pine got tackled by the quarterback, but on the rewatch, I actually watched that. Kaiser doesn't block Ritter, the quarterback, which allows Drew White to get tackled, of course, by an arm. But defense played fine. We saw the return of that random 3-man front that Coach Freeman loves, that holds so dear, where we again take our best pass rusher when we put them in the box. They were carving us up on seams, and if anybody's ever played Madden, the video game, like you can hit middle seams. It's the easiest throw for a quarterback to make. Um, we're playing single high safety, and they're asking a first round pick type defensive end to run vertical with a slot receiver, and it's just like he's a fish out of water. You saw a similar concept with Bertrand later in the game, and that was when the game was lost. Was that play? And I don't put it on JD because he's been an animal all season. Where a tight end runs a vertical route, and you teach kids. I teach my inside linebackers in pass coverage to get depth, not width, right? So on that play, that tight end is trying to banana route. He's trying to bend it back in, and Bertrand just gets a little bit too much width, and he uncovers the tight end uncovers. So solid effort by the defense. Um, Cincinnati had 3 extra possessions. Cam Hart's going to be a hell of a player, and I just want, some of these kids in these games where your back's up against the wall, like somebody's got to step up and make a play. And Cam was very close on a couple different instances to getting there. But defense played great, but there's only so much they can do.
Okay.
And I think the kind of the wheels sort of came off. Like I said, I thought we were in that game until halfway through the fourth quarter, then the wheels kind of came off.
Okay. So if Drew Pine starts the game, does Notre Dame win? Because the Fighting Irish went into halftime with 0 points, down 17-0, and then outscored Cincinnati 13-7 in the second half. Game certainly got close, and when it was 17-13, it's like, all right, if Notre Dame can get a stop here and get the ball back, Drew Pine can go lead them down the field for a win. So
yes,
I said in our Saturday show, if there was a 5th quarter, I think Notre Dame wins the game, or maybe makes it a 1-score game. So yeah, you think Drew Pine starts the game, Notre Dame wins?
Sure. I mean, I think if we're saying, Mike, that Drew Pine gives us the best chance to win going forward, I think you could correlate that with today's game, right? That he would have given us a much better chance to win. But there's a lot to. I just think, okay, we've figured out we got our quarterback. Now we can get back to that RPO scheme. Fine, right? You have if our pass pro is a little bit leaky, we've got a guy that's can get us out of maybe if Jack's immobility is gonna lead to 5 or 6 sacks, and maybe Pine's ability he uncovers and maybe it leads to a couple different chunk plays or chunk throws. I don't want to get off this call without talking about the poor play of the receivers, and I don't want all this to go on Jack Cohn either. Like, I'm happy that we had Jack Cohn. I thank you for your service, but those receivers are, in a lot of ways, just as big of an issue as the quarterback play, as the O line play. It's not as bad as the O line play, but it's damn near close. It really is. And again, it's just that's 2 weeks in a row where I've seen Kevin Austin not play like he has the ability to. And the drop passes they're so obvious, but the inability to get off of why is Michael Mayer a dude that's like 6'5", 250? How come he can get a clean release and give him some shit at the line of scrimmage and get a clean release and nobody else can? I'm watching Kevin Austin up against press coverage use his hands almost like he's trying to block them. Like they put his hands on him. He has no way of getting skinny, any kind of clean release. He's fighting with them to get off a press coverage. So I was happy to see Lorenzo Styles catch a ball because in order for this offense to work, somebody outside of Kyron and somebody outside of Michael Mayer is going to have to step up. And if Mayer has to sit down for a few weeks to nurse that groin, and these dudes don't step up, and I'm talking about, Mike, where these are contested catches and the ball hits the ground, right? It's like, what is it going to take for us to give that extra 10, 15% effort to like go secure the catch? Like this is high level football. This is a big time environment. You know what I mean? Like go catch the ball.
Sure, sure. All right, make sure you guys start hitting your dropping your questions in the comment box if you're with us live. We'll guarantee we'll answer it with the super chat, but otherwise we will get into questions after this quick segment here. I'm kind of looking at what is next for this Notre Dame football team. The upcoming stretch, you go at, let me zoom out here for YouTube. At Virginia Tech, just look at the rest of the
Great.
month of October. At Virginia Tech, potentially Drew Pines' first starting game as Notre Dame quarterback. I would believe that he will be the guy. That's just my personal opinion. Got a bye week, so if you're Notre Dame, you're hoping you just win against Vautech somehow, and then you have a bye week to figure some things out. USC at home, North Carolina at home. Now, this stretch doesn't look as tough as it did before the start of the season, but still, 3 talented football teams. All 3 teams are able to beat Notre Dame. Like, if
Why do
Toledo
we have
almost
so many?
upset Notre Dame. Go ahead, Mike.
Why do we have so many home games, Mike? It's you know what I mean. I mean, I guess we play. It just seems like we have. It's like weighted more heavily. Everybody's
7 home,
USC's at home. Yeah, it's
7 home
crazy,
games, 5 road. Yeah.
and that's
And there's
ironic
the
because
Chicago game. Yeah.
yeah, sure, but we talked about that prior to the Chicago game because the environment at that Toledo game was kind of stale or kind of bland, and that I thought it would be really healthy for those teams, for the team, and in particular the defense to go on the road. And I'm like, man, I'm looking forward to them going on the road against Virginia Tech and kind of cleansing their palate and um, getting a fresh start night game. Like a night game at Blacksburg, you have no choice but to get up and play your ass off. Um, and this is the other thing too. I've heard it said like, oh, well, we're Toledo's Super Bowl. You said it, Mike, and we're Cincinnati's Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, of course, they're coming to Notre Dame Stadium to beat a program that didn't recruit them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's difficult sometimes to match that intensity during a day game. So I think that we'll play well against Virginia Tech. Hopefully, I mean, they play defense down there. They've got crowd noise. Special teams is always a factor against them. SC will be a night game. Should be a great game. SC is kind of steadily improving. I love to see that these games at Notre Dame are night games. That makes me more optimistic about our level of play due to it being a night game.
Okay.
Navy, it'll be interesting because I don't know if Coach Freeman's played against like a triple option like that before as a new coordinator. So that could be interesting the first half of that game. So if you just kind of look at it, the night games, folks, I think that our level of play will rise. I
Okay.
just do.
Okay.
So,
All right. I had one other item in here, but now I don't remember. So we will get straight into questions.
those concussions, Mike. It's all those concussions, buddy.
So we're gonna pull up some super chats. Great name here. Pork Chop Express says, please go over your thoughts on Kelly not being able to develop quarterbacks. The backup always performs better than the starter. Then the starter ends up getting benched for the next backup. My kind of question to add on there would be, I mean, is there some credit there to having multiple guys who can play? I mean, Notre Dame's got 3 quarterbacks who've helped them win games this year. So I'll just kind of throw that out, and which I know that's not a popular thought, but just curious your take, Mike.
Well, the two of you talked about this last night, in that the teams that we lose to during a playoff type scenario have elite quarterbacks. The Justin Fields, the Trevor Lawrences, the Tuas, right? I mean, like the Mac Jones, like you name it, go down the list. They have those, and we haven't had one since Brady Quinn, and then maybe Deshaun Kaiser would kind of fall into that categorically. He was a second round pick, had the big arm, had the size, the athleticism. We don't get those dudes, and it's like, this is all theory. No one's ever told me this, but I think that Kelly doesn't want to deal with like a 5-star or like a perceived 5-star ego from some of these top flight, upper echelon, Matthew Stafford gifted type kids. We just don't get them. We get kids that are like, they play above maybe they play to the level of their ability. So maybe this will answer the question for old Pork Chop there, Mike. So prior to Kelly's whatever win, prior to him surpassing Newt Rockne, he did like a little interview segment I think it was for NBC. You can probably find it on YouTube. That's where I found it. And the gentleman interviewing Coach Kelly asked, like, okay, you're about to pass Newt Rockne, how do you define success? And Kelly, don't quote me on this, but he said something to the effect of, we define, or yeah, you're the winningest coach, but you've never won a program. How do you define your personal success? And to which he answered, I define success as basically getting the most out of our players, getting our players to play up to their full level of ability, right? So if you take in an Ian Book who has a ceiling that's lower than like a Trevor Lawrence, and I get Ian Book to play there, then I did my job as a coach, right? But then also begs the question, like, who's setting that ceiling for Ian Book, right? Is it the coaching staff only thinks he can get to be this good? It's just an interesting dynamic. So I don't know why we don't get a top flight. Again, your O-line, well, who would want to go play behind that? And then you could say, oh, well, Angeli's really good. It's like, no, I'm talking about the number one. I like not the Spencer Rattler, because he's not, but like we want a top 2, top 3, 5-star quarterback. That's what everybody wants, and I think that's what you need to win at that level. And we're going after Drew Pine. God love him, but he's 5'11", 190 pounds. He'll never be a first-round pick based off, I should say never, if he's Baker's his comp, but
goes back to trucker trailer, what we talked about, Mike. Notre Dame needs a truck at quarterback.
Yeah.
And
you mentioned that last night. It's a great analogy, Mike. And I wish I had these answers, man. You spin as you try and talk through it, but
well, I'm trying to think as the recruiting guy, why isn't Notre Dame getting that? And you look at it multiple ways. Glass half full, half empty, like this one is. You're like, well, Pine was actually an elite quarterback recruit. He, Nick Saban offered him when he was in 8th grade. I think that Pine didn't maybe get as tall as some people would have hoped. His dad's pretty tall. I met his dad, highly successful man. His dad's like 6'5", I want to say 6'4", 6'5". Pine
Well,
just
that
didn't
has
get there.
something. Coaches easily take that into account when they're evaluating a
Yeah,
kid. But yeah, Drew might have been the kid that had hairy legs in sixth grade. I mean, we all know that
I
kid, you
think
know.
so. I think so.
So,
And Buckner, I
yeah,
mean, he was a 5-star at some points based on some services. And, Dracovic was that guy. It just,
yeah, Phil was that guy. And especially the way he carries himself and the way that he's hurt, he's banged up now, but the way that Phil kind of carries himself, the gamesmanship, like he's a gamer. He has the size, he has the arm, the moxie. Yeah, I mean, he's a good quarterback, but he left. So I think my general sort of loose theory that's based off of, you know, three seltzers and a little bit of just observation over the years. I don't think that Kelly wants to deal with a 5-star persona and the ego that accompanies that. There's only enough room for enough ego. That's why you hire a Tommy Reese, right? Because he's going to be naturally subservient to his former coach. There's something to that, and I'll let the message boards unpack that all. But that to me is like I just feel like there's not enough room for Coach Kelly. It's like let's move on past that, Mike. I don't have the answer, but that's my loose theory.
I don't buy that personally, but
That's fair.
you could be onto something along those lines. But they offered the big time guys. Now it's maybe, are they too late? There's
Well, they
that
were
kind
late for Mike. You and I have talked about this. Like the number one tight end in the country. I trained him for a time here in Nebraska, and I let them know before anybody. I was like, "This kid's a stud, dude. He's a stud. His length, his speed." Ended up being the number one
Why
tight
is
end in
that
the
kid's
country.
name's mistaking me, or I'm losing his
Thomas
name?
Fedoni. That's how you
Fedoni.
and I
Yeah,
met, Mike.
yeah.
That was how you and I met, was through that kid. And we were like his 15th, 18th offer, and they
Yeah.
knew about him before anybody did. And then
Yeah.
during COVID, they're at. So we'll move on past that, Mike. I know you don't like to talk about that stuff, but sometimes they're late on these dudes. And that
Oh,
is
I
that
just
is
I
that
just
Kelly's
said it. No, I don't. I'm fine with it.
is
I
that is
said
that
they're
Kelly? But I'm
late
saying,
sometimes.
is that Kelly's ego where it's like, oh, he's not that good. Let's wait and see. Like, oh, that quarterback, he's not that good. Let's wait and see. It's like, no, man, you got to get out there and recruit. I don't
Like
know.
when you
Anyways,
kind of do
moving on.
this number, dude, you look jacked. Like I'm just gonna
Only when I do that.
no, but I'm just saying even more so. Just kind of
Well,
pop the shoulders up.
thanks.
Appreciate the super chat, Nick. Raymond says, "What do we hang our hat on offensively?" Kind of something you touched on earlier, and your answer was, "Hell if I know."
Yeah, Ray. At this point, it's bad. I think to try and answer your question, I think with Drew we can get back to a little bit of that RPO game, and which seemed like the first week or two of the season. That's kind of was a pillar of Coach Reese's offense this year. So hopefully you see more of a return to that. But until everybody wants to talk about the quarterback, it starts with the offensive line. It's just the nucleus of championship teams, especially at the NFL level, is like strong offensive line play. But hopefully we get back to a little bit more RPO. Um, and with that, you'll be able to push the ball downfield a little bit more.
Okay. So Zibby says, "Does every loss need to be a referendum on the program?" I think it's a fine point. I mean, look, you look around the country this season. A lot of teams got issues. Oklahoma hasn't lost yet. They've looked
Yeah.
like crap at times. Ohio State lost to Oregon, which I guess is a fine loss. I'm just thinking off the top of my head.
Well,
Iowa
Oregon,
State
yeah,
was
but
everyone's
Oregon,
darling. They lose. North Carolina's everyone's darling. They've lost. USC's a dumpster fire. Stanford, they're not great. I mean, you go
no,
down the
it's good,
line.
Mike.
There's two elite teams.
Florida, yeah.
Clemson's got 2 losses. They lost to NC State, for crying out loud. So thoughts here, Mike? I mean, it's such a glaring thing, the quarterback and the offensive line. It's just so right there. And we have like 80% of the comments coming in here: fire Jeff Quinn, fire Tommy Reese. Heck, Notre Dame could win their next 3 games, and you're looking at a 7-1 team. Who the heck knows?
You don't call for people to get fired. That's bad karma. It's just bad karma, right? It's like you don't root against Notre Dame's quarterback. It's just bad karma. Does every loss need to be a referendum on the program itself? No. But I live here in Nebraska, folks, and I just watched last night Nebraska beat the brakes off of Northwestern like 52-7 or something, or 59-7. So it's like I don't understand why some programs can just come out and just like, oh, they put a drive together and they scored a touchdown. Oh, and then they got the ball back and then they kicked the field goal. Like there's no continuity. So there's a lot of gray area to this Zibby 43. But to be like, oh, it's a complete referendum on the program. Did you watch the game? It's brutal. Um, Furthermore, oh, Cincinnati wasn't that good. Well, who is? Florida lost. Oregon, number 3 team in the country, lost to Stanford, was a 500 team going into the game. This year, there's Bama and there's Georgia. Next year, it'll be a different top 2 or 3 or 4 program. If we're trying to get into that level, you can't play football like we did against Cincinnati. So it's not a referendum. But what I'm saying, like, if I'm hard on Kevin Austin because he can't get off a release, yeah, but he's still young. It's like, no, dude, go play. Like, if we're trying to be an elite program, people need to step up. Um,
Kevin
so
Austin.
it's not a referendum. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he had 7 catches for 63 yards, but like, yeah, but he didn't. Outside of that, he didn't really do anything exceptional. So you've got Mayer, who's exceptional. You got Kyron, who's exceptional. Defensively, you've got Hamilton, who's played exceptional. Bertrand's played well. Your front four's played great. Cam Hart's coming on. You've got like 4 or 5 guys that are playing at an elite level, and the rest is kind of mush. So it's not an indictment on the program so much as like, and Cincinnati's not a great team. There's only 2 great teams, and if we're trying to get to that level, like, you can't play football like we did yesterday.
Okay. We did get a comment going back to the triple option thing. Freeman, they did beat Army last year, so he's played triple
Perfect.
option. So
Need to hire that guy, Mike.
Bring him in, dropping dimes. Had a good comment that I want to.
Now I'm wondering if Army runs a triple option. I don't know if they work off the fullback or not. Like maybe,
but
not.
I believe
Anyway.
I believe they've played Navy recently as well. So all right, super chat from Garth. Appreciate the support. Says Kelly's ego is the reason we're sucking right now. He did not like the fact that Harry was getting all the credit for the offensive line success.
Who knows?
Okay.
That's being. I can't. I personally I can't get into that because I do not know if that's the case. But what I can get into, Garth, is what I see on the field in terms of like the pass pro technique is odd to me. And then like with this week with this new plan of leaving 2 backs in to chip and then release, like, and whether the offensive line's blocking outside in and the running backs are inside out, it was a bit of a mess. So that's what I can speak to.
With the offensive line, like I've had some comments, seen at least one saying, well, Mike, you still high on Jeff Quinn. My stance on Quinn has always been, just from a recruiting guy, that's what I get paid for, is I think he's one of the best recruiters on the staff. Like, I don't care if you disagree with me. I think from who he's landed in the past couple of classes when I've been covering Notre Dame has been very good. Carmody, Baker, Fisher, Alt, Spindler, Pat Coogan, Caleb Johnson, and then this class, Tanona, Craig, and in the young man up in the Northeast, name's escaping me at this point in time. I don't know why, but Tai
Is
Chan.
it Chang or Chang?
Tai Chan, yeah.
Yes.
I think he's a good recruiter. Like, shoot me, I don't care. But if you look at losing 4 offensive linemen to the draft, there's going to be a drop-off. Just like at the quarterback position, Ian Book has been your guy for so long. There's going to be a drop-off there. Like, unless you're just Alabama where you just reload like crazy everywhere. But again, to counter that, my own point, Notre Dame should be able to reload on the offensive line, right, Mike?
At that position, yeah. But I've heard too, going back to last year, that some of our offensive linemen were pretty banged up, especially near the tail end of the season, kind of going into the playoff, and that maybe you could have gave them a break and sat them down for a quarter or a half, and just to let them rest and let some of those other guys develop. Whereas you didn't see any sort of development from the tier two or second string guys. But being a college coach, there's two parts to it. You got to be able to recruit and you got to be able to develop. So if Coach Quinn's a great recruiter, that's half of it. And then the development part, where was what you see on Saturdays up to this point, hasn't been great. So
Yeah, and then you look at last year. It was really good last year. That team was carried by the offensive line. And then you see comments, well, Harry Heastand recruited most of those guys, if not all of them. But then who developed them? Who's been their coach? So I don't have the answers for that. Everyone's saying fire Quinn. I will let you guys have that
well,
conversation.
I didn't think who was our right tackle last year? What's his name?
Crud.
Hainsey.
Hainsey.
Hainsey. I didn't think Hainsey was great, especially in pass pro, but I mean, these guys get drafted. So, but I mean, if I've got Ronnie Stanley, McGlinchey, Quentin Nelson is his own animal.
Yeah.
I don't think Quentin Nelson needs a coach. I mean, but if you're going to ride Quentin Nelson's coattails as a recruiter, who wouldn't? But I didn't think that last year's offensive line, technique wise, was like out of this world.
Okay.
But let's move on, Mike.
No, I will trust your opinion on that. Rick says we need to criticize the program for the loss, especially when the manner in which we lost is very typical and distinctly us. No intensity. Do you agree with those last two words? No intensity,
Well,
Mike?
I would say that it's distinctly us, and that it's a big game. And
But Mike, if Notre Dame beats Cincinnati, no one's saying it's a big game. Oh, it's Cincinnati. You beat the team you were supposed to.
no, that's not true. That's not. They're ranked. It was a top 10 matchup. They were ranked
But
higher than
going into the
us.
game, all I saw was from Notre Dame fans that we should blow the doors off Cincinnati, 52-0. But that might not be your opinion. I'm just telling you what I see.
What was the question? The no intensity thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I tend to agree with this, and that it's big games where it's like defensively, Cam Hart almost made two awesome plays. Isaiah Foskey gets one. We have one sack, and it happens to be a strip sack. That's a big play. But like defensively, there was no other big plays made. And then offensively, there was. I'm doing a quick brain scan here. There was no big plays on offense, right? I mean, there was a pass to Lenzy. Outside of that, like nobody steps up. So I think that's more like leadership in those different rooms. I don't think that like, oh, you read on message boards like Kelly doesn't get the guys fired up. It's like, again, these are high level college athletes. They're not in the NFL. They don't need to be fired up. I think a standard kind of needs to be set for this is how we play these games. Are they identifying that it is a big game? I don't know. I mean, it's fair to be honest with yourself, but when those teams, like a team like Cincinnati, it's talking shit coming into the game, coming into your stadium, and it's just kind of a sort of a boxing match. The first 5 rounds, the first half, we're sort of feeling each other out, and we never take a punch or throw a punch. That's problematic in terms of like the lack of intensity. So I think sometimes that comes down to the kids themselves and who's holding each other accountable, calling each other out on the carpet. I don't know if that's the culture over there. Um, but yeah, we've seen a lot of it in those big games, and this is the biggest game we've played thus far. That's
Yeah.
why you come to Notre Dame.
Mike, we're about an hour in. You good to go a little bit longer?
Absolutely, man.
All right. Hell yeah. Well, yeah, we're rocking and rolling. We got a big group. If you're watching live with us, please hit that thumbs up. Watching back by now, hope you would hit that thumbs up. Yeah, D-Rock Irish, he loves you, Mike. The people love you. So, Notre Dame hype videos makes a good point in that Notre Dame beat itself with the 3 turnovers. You can't turn the ball over.
So I'll tell you this much, going back to the like D-Rock Irishes, like thank you for that compliment. I just know, and now I sound like Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, right? Like glory days type thing. But I just remember like when I was playing football at Notre Dame, Like when we threw it, an interception or fumbled the ball, I went back on the field pissed and also happy to be back on the field, like because I get to play more. Like it was just like, yes, here we go. I get to play more. I like this is our chance to respond. That was just how I sort of felt. And the defense, like I said, they hung around, but it's like, okay, if the offense isn't going to be able to do it, like we gotta make plays. And you saw it against Wisconsin where we created multiple turnovers, and you didn't. It didn't happen this week. Like I said, Cam Hart got very close on a couple, but it's like if offense isn't going to do it, then we got to do it, guys. And we look at each other, and that's leadership, right? And I remember in that 2002 team again. I wish Lou were here, and some of our fans will remember. Like 2002, we were ranked number 4 in the country. Mike, we went the first 7 games of the season, dude, and didn't score a touchdown, right? We went 8-0, 7 games without scoring a touchdown. It was just based off the defense because we're like, we got to do this. If they're not going to do it, we're going to do it, and losing's not an option. So you need more kids like that to kind of look at each other, and hold each other to a higher standard. That's where I'm coming from.
Question for you, Mike. The amount of red in the stands. Your thoughts on that? I'll let you take that wherever you want to.
I didn't seem like it was that bad. I thought it was proportional for how big of a game this was for Cincinnati. I thought it was proportional. It
Okay.
did bother me, if I'm
Really?
honest with you. Yeah, you're not going to get me riled up with that one. No, but
I
I thought it was
wanted
I thought
to.
it was
I was wanting
oh
fired up
it was
goals.
a no, I thought it was proportional. I thought it was fair. It's a big game for them. It wasn't like, I was a part of that whatever year that was, 2000, 2001, where like Nebraska like dominated like 60% of our stadium. And so, good for Cincinnati. And like people were like, yeah, it's so funny to me too, where I'm really big on self accountability, and like fans will be like, oh, Cincinnati's a bunch of punks, for like post game antics, pre game. It's like, okay, well, we had our shot. We had our shot to do something about it. We didn't. So that's on us. That's not on them. That's on us.
Another super chat. I love super chats where people are like pissed at me. That's fine. Bring it in, Garth. We appreciate it. He says, Mike Singer,
Dude, Garth must have hit the lottery, dude.
Chris Watt was there coaching up those guys. Who was the Harry Heastand disciple? He was not there in 2019 when the line sucks. Uh,
No,
Chris
I'll
Watt.
say I'll try and encapsulate what Garth is trying to say. I do think that there's an aspect to coaching kids, and I work with, again, kids on the side. There is something to being able to ask a GA like Chris Watts a dumb question that you're fearful of asking your position coach, right? Because he's a younger guy, it's more relatable. There's something to that. And then I do think the closer that, like Chris Watts being an ex-player, and not being that far removed from having his hand in the dirt, I do think that a guy like Chris Watts may have a better way of conveying what Coach Quinn is trying to say and sort of putting his own little spin on it. I use a lot of analogies when I'm trying to work with kids to get them to understand a point. So there might be some validity to that. There may be.
Yeah. I just, I don't know. I see comments where, it's the GA was the reason this team was great. I don't know. Or the position group was great. That's just, that's just a me thing personally. But all right, keep dropping questions. I'm scrolling through some comments, some older ones, and some some new ones. Dropping Dime says, "What's next is to start Drew Pine." So you're starting Pine against Virginia Tech. What would you think for him going into that environment? What do you expect from the quarterback play next week?
I A part of me hopes that he and Coach Reese can have a conversation and just be like, uh, "Let me go out there and ball." Like, I mean, we've seen a case in point. So we turn the ball over, strip sack by Foskey. Drew White gets tackled by their quarterback with one arm. Our next play call is a run. Whereas I'm saying, dude, flush the first 5 games down the toilet. We're starting over. Let's let it rip. I think that hopefully the receivers are more engaged. I don't know what we do about the offensive line, but I just hope that, I don't know. Pine just strikes me as a kid that's got a lot of self confidence and can maybe approach Coach Reese and be like, dude, let's do this. And maybe Coach Reese is looking for an answer or looking for some, looking for a ray of hope or looking for some guidance. And maybe Drew can give him that. And I just think that Drew's the type of kid that can get receivers to rally. I'm, I'm sitting in a like a bar stool thing, sitting in like a bar stool thing. I'm trying to like get myself some low back support here, Mike. But that's what I hope happens. That's what I hope happens. Is just kind of open it up a little bit. We haven't been able to run the ball, so maybe try and do the inverse of that and throw it.
Yeah. I said yesterday in our live show that that game at halftime was like all right, this experiment is over. The duct tape, try to figure out each game, like it's done. It's change time.
You're talking about with Cone.
Yeah, the quarterbacks, the offensive line, it's like, all right, Cone, Madden, sit the bench. We gotta change this.
What made Mike Singer change his thoughts about that position?
What does that say up on
why'd you flip it? So
what does that say above your head right there? Does that say the Mike Singer show, or does that say
fair.
the Mike Goolsby Show? Hey, no one's here to give a damn about my opinion. Look,
well,
I'll answer.
You were such a staunch Jack Cone guy, and then just overnight, man, he's chopped liver.
Look, I still, we had a comment earlier. We've had so many comments. It's been a fantastic YouTube show. I wish I could go find it. Someone said that Cone's the best quarterback on the team, they think, but it was just not. I still believe that right now he's the best thrower of the football. It's just he's not the right quarterback for this team, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But the more you see of Pine and just that shit to him that we love to say, and, you know, I've been such a Pine guy over the years, but I guess I can't be a Pine guy and a Cone guy and a Buckner guy. I can't be everyone's guy because then I'm no one's guy, right? If that makes sense. But no, I've been on Pine. I remember telling you last year, just watch out for this kid who just looks like a normal Notre Dame student in his calc class. But no, he's got it.
Again, I'm pro Pine to an extent, but I'm more let's move on from Jack Cone. And I think that part of this, I think the tangibles we broke down earlier, tangibles, intangibles, the tangibles are better than Cone from what I've seen thus far. And I think the intangibles are much, much better than Cone. And like, you have to have somebody in that huddle. And it's been Kyron for so long. Mayer's still relatively kind of youngish to me. I mean, he's only a sophomore, but I think that the offense, it can't get much worse. It can't.
Yeah. All right, Mike. I think we can call it.
All right.
Well, fun show.
Who do you got tonight? Who do you got tonight? You got the Patriots.
I was actually going to ask you that earlier. I will typically, throw a buck on those Monday night games just to keep myself interested. I'm not quite the big parlay guy like you. It's Bucks Pats tonight. I got the -7 line. Just screamed, what's the catch here? It makes way too much sense. Like, I'm sure the public money flew in on the Bucks, so I'm sure the Pats will cover it, right? So what'd you think about?
I would say so too. I would think that it's interesting because Brady's coming in off of a loss, right? So you'd think you would play much better, or just bring the team along with them. It's a huge game. Marquee game, like Sunday night game's a marquee game anyways. I mean, there's now with Belichick, Brady. I think the NFL is going to want to keep it close. Not
love
to be a conspiracy theorist.
Conspiracy, I love it.
I think the NFL is going to try and keep it close. I think Pats are probably winning at halftime, but then you can't bet against Tom Brady. I'm not touching the game just because of the number, but I think Tom Brady ultimately wins. But okay. I think Pats are probably up at halftime.
Okay.
Is my 2
cents.
The
Pats just suck. I'm a Dolphins guy, as folks can see from my cup, we suck. We really are bad. We beat the Pats though week 1. I mean, it's week 1, so take it with a grain of salt. But
Well, look at Notre Dame. Look at Notre Dame's week 1 offensive performance versus FSU. Now, granted, FSU isn't great, but they've got athletes.
dude, week 1,
But
just win.
But I'm saying you've got an entire month to game plan for a game, and then shit gets real week 2, week 3, week 4 because you got 4 or 5 days, whatever, right? So now is when you start to separate the wheat from the chaff, as they say, Mike. The wheat from the chaff.
So I'm interested in this. You said they got so long to prepare for that first game, but 4 or 5 games. But during the offseason, those college coaches, and you're playing for Notre Dame, how much are you looking at other opponents, though? Is it just all week 1 that you're looking at in the offseason? How much are you looking at and watching film of some other teams?
During the offseason, I don't
fall camp.
Want to speak for any. So spring ball is when you're installing your offense or installing your defense, but it's also, in my experience, it's sort of open competition. All my kids that I train to go play in college, I'm like, dude, you win your job during spring, because they're not trying to have a coaching staff shouldn't be trying to have position competition 1, 2, 3 weeks into camp, right? That's not ideal. You want to have your starters kind of penciled in, and then camp is maybe a week or 2 of sort of recovering what was the installed during spring, and then the last 2 weeks of camp you're getting ready for week 1. But in terms of the true off season, they're out recruiting. You don't see, as a college football player, again, based off my experience, you don't see your position coach for 6 months out of the year. You don't. They're out recruiting or doing whatever they're doing. You see your strength coaches, Even all summer, you don't see your position coach.
Sure.
I mean, they're not allowed to visit with you. So.
Right.
But that being said, all the time, you could spend all the time, I watched that game 2.5 times. Folks, I watched it right up into our call today, and there were some blatantly obvious things that are easily corrected, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Throw out that 3-man rush deal. Just throw it out, right? Find a third corner so that we're not – we literally have the best safety in college football that should be back there playing center field, picking off passes from the opposite hash like we saw against Florida State. We're using them in man coverage. That's a waste of ability to me. So let's find somebody else that we can go out there. I'd say probably play a little bit less Jack Kaiser against teams that throw the ball and play more Pryor. Pryor hasn't made any mistakes to me. This stuff isn't that complicated. It's really not, so anyways, we'll have to get into a defensive breakdown one of these days and put up a whiteboard or find some sort of a workaround around copyrights or something.
Oh, I like the whiteboard idea.
Oh, I'm down to go over that 3-man thing. I'm down to go over Freeman's.
We could throw up a whiteboard, or we can't play video because our broadcast will get copyright strike. But we could post screenshots of personnel. If we get some kind of overview where you can see all 11. So we will have to look. I think bye week would be great. Have a Goolsby Show on the bye week.
Okay,
right.
I'm in.
All right,
dude. Well,
internet didn't crap out. Over an hour. Look at us, Longest Live Show. I'm Mike Singer. He's Mike Goolsby. Appreciate you guys. We will catch you next time.